My camera works as a time machine. Camera can be able to stop the world. And we stop the world and then investigate what is there carefully.
Hello there. Hiroshi Sugimoto is never going to win world press or create a huge buzz on Instagram. His work is quiet, open-ended, and it fuses invention, philosophy, history with documentary photography. To really appreciate his work, one has to slow down, breathe out, and get oneself into a contemplative mood. His process of creating work is complex, and in order to appreciate it, one has to allow time for the communication to take place. For Sugimoto and the viewer, this work is a process of discovery rather than a document of fact. He immerses himself in the process of building a series of photographs and explores his themes in a manner that is probably more similar to that of a poet or a scientist. His work involves questions about the human condition, meaning, and he is fascinated by the mysteries of time itself.
They say that the camera never lies, but it can stretch the truth.
Sugimoto, now 75 years old, is the son of a beauty product salesman. He is an architect as well as a photographer. He studied politics and sociology in Tokyo and photography in California. After his studies in his early 20s, he left Pasadena and drove across the US in a van. And he found work as an assistant in New York. While doing this job, he stumbled upon the Museum of Natural History, and he was immediately drawn to the famous dioramas. These are showcasings of nature. They were made in the early 20th century, and he was captivated by the way that these exhibits made him feel. They were unsettling because they appeared to be real, but were also static and lifeless. He wanted, through photography, to resurrect these nature scenes and to suggest life. Of course, the photographic medium has done the opposite. On many occasions, it's made living things appear dead. He later said that he often makes photographs that show objects that are deceptive to people who want to be deceived. So he's also calling attention to our own vulnerability to wanting to believe that an image is what it appears to be. For this work, he used an old wooden box camera which was made in the 19th century, and he shot in black and white. He started with the polar bear scene using a long, possibly 20-minute exposure. And he also experimented with light in order to give the fairly blandly lit exhibit some vitality. When he saw the results, he recognized that he had opened a door for himself into the world of creativity and art. These images leave viewers uncertain and confused about what they're actually looking at, and we begin to question what is real. So this process draws us into the pictures. When he completed this body of work, he managed to get a meeting at MoMA, and they immediately bought a set of these images. Sugimoto went on to explore similar themes with his photographs of wax figures. They appear as formal portraits of real people, but when you look closely at the skin and the eyes, you're left feeling shocked, and you're also feeling a bit like you've been conned. His work is constantly telling us that you have to go beyond what is visible. You have to go to the next layer of the image, and you end up in a place that you couldn't have predicted when you started. During an interview, he was asked what advice he had for an aspiring young artist. And his answer gives us some insight into the way that he sees the world and how he explores his work.
そうですね、アーティストになる前に別に他の仕事を探した方がいいと思うんですけどね。まずはですね、いろいろな経験を積んで、アートというのはやっぱり人間としてある一つの含みがないとっていうか、世界をどう理解するかということをアートで表現できる人というのは非常に少ないわけですから、まずはアーティストになろうと思う前に世界がどうなっているのかを知る旅に出てほしいですね。そしてもう一つはですね、自分がいい人だなと思う人はやめた方がいいと思いますね。アーティストで成功する人っていうのはみんなちょっと変人が多いですね。精神がひねくれてっていうか、普通の人が見るような見方では見ない感性っていうか目を持ってないといけないんですよね。ですから自分がいい人だと思う人は向いていませんね。そこでやめた方がいいと思うんですよね。
Probably his most famous photographs are his Seascape Series. Some of these prints have sold for over $1 million. In these images, taken at different locations around the world, he places the horizon in the center of the frame, thereby giving equal emphasis to the ocean and to the sky.
My seascapes, I can even expand the time-stopping function beyond 1839. My seascapes is able to stop the time of the human consciousness hundreds of thousands of years. I can think back using a photography. So in that case, I'm not looking for the future. I'm looking backwards to investigate human nature, human consciousness, human mind.
The photographs are calm and draw the viewer into a primal space that makes one question ideas of eternity and also our own impermanence and insignificance. He's delving into the idea of time, how earliest man must have stared at this sight in a similar manner to which we do today. He says about these photographs that he wanted to convey how the imprint of thousands of years of human history is within him. So they communicate something about the universality of human beings. I think the best way to get a sense of what he's wished to communicate to viewers within his long career is to look at different series and just see how they make you feel rather than trying to analyze them too precisely. He started a theatre series initially looking at cinemas and drive-ins throughout the US. He would set up his camera and expose the theatre for the full length of the film, so that the screen becomes white and the light that the film projects exposes the interior of the theatre. He's saying something about the transition of time and the ethereal nature of experience and of existence. The second part of his project involved photographing the grand opera houses of Europe. These lavish structures often formed the architectural foundations for many of the famous cinemas in the US. When he returned to the States, he photographed cinema theaters that had gone out of business and were in a state of disrepair. Again, from this series, you get a sense of time unfolding very slowly as these theaters have evolved and their function has also changed. His architectural images are blurry, and on first sight you might just think they're gimmicky. But his intention was to produce images that replicate the initial unformed vision that the architects had when they were imagining a structure within the environment. He photographed famous buildings from all around the world, and the effect of the blurring is that the secondary details become lost, and one is left with just the essential line and shape, just as an architect would have seen it. Because of his interest with this creative field, he's reinventing the architectural creative process. Sugimoto has the inquiring mind of a scientist, and in his series called Lightning Fields, he used a 400,000 volt electrode to create sparks. The result in each case is a unique, instantaneous image of an electric current. He was combining the scientific discoveries about electricity by Benjamin Franklin and Michael Faraday, and he was expanding this exploration into the field of photography. He was inspired by some of the experiments done by Fox Talbot in the 19th century. Sugimoto does things on a grand scale. For an exhibition of this work, he chose to use a decommissioned power station. When Sugimoto discovered that a number of original negatives taken by Fox Talbot still remained unprinted, he was determined to collect them. He used his income from the sale of his prints for a whole year in order to buy these. It seems that when Talbot was on honeymoon with his wife at Lake Como in Italy, he and his wife became interested in drawing the beautiful scenes that they saw. Talbot unfortunately was upset by his result because his wife had some drawing talent whereas he didn't, and her drawings were far superior to his. He was obviously very competitive and was determined to invent a machine that could reproduce scenes better than the drawings that his wife made. Eventually he developed a negative-positive process that he referred to as photogenic drawing. Sugimoto sees his interaction with Talbot's negatives as a process of collaboration. He's produced greatly enlarged and atmospheric prints that reveal layers of detail that were unobservable within the negatives. Sugimoto was drawn to the beauty of mathematical equations, but he needed to find a way of representing these. He transformed them into tangible objects by inputting the equations into a computer, and then he went on to mold the structures. Sugimoto's work can be described as conceptual because he's expressing ideas indirectly. But that term seems insufficient when you consider the complex lines of communication that he's been able to devise. His photographs could be described, I think, better as poems about ideas. Maybe spend a little time with these images and see what they invoke in you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.
意識が芽生えたんですよ。それまでは曖昧模糊とした中にいて自分がいるっていう意識がないんですよ。ですから海がはっきり見えるという記憶が、それは自分がこう記憶できるだけのその、インパクトっていうのが自分がいるっていう意識ですよね。でそれは個人の意識の発生なんだけども、もちろんそのもっと長いスパンで見れば人類の中でその動物的な猿の状態から人間になるっていうのはそういうことですよね。自分がいる、自分は生まれたんだ、でいつか死ぬんだっていう意識もそれと一緒についてくるわけですよ。見るべきものは密って言って海に沈んでいくわけですから、見るべきものは密っていう感覚を、僕は死ぬ時にそう思いたいですよね。